So welcome back again to the next in our series of interviews with Babette Rothschild, the author of 8 Keys to Safe Trauma Recovery. We've been going through the different keys, and now we've reached one that says take smaller steps. I'm wondering, from what I've understood from what you've been saying, inside the person who's suffering from the effects of trauma, there's a big sense of urgency. They really want to get things moving fast? Won't they be frustrated by slowing down?
Perhaps. However, there are times when doing things more slowly will assure, or better assure, success than trying to do things more quickly. And in dealing with trauma, that's often the case. I find people who are frustrated with their progress with trauma, or the therapists who are consulting me having difficulties with clients, finding that they've reached roadblocks in dealing with the work. Often the issue is more that the steps they're trying to attempt are too big. And so when they attempt steps that are bigger than they can manage, or another analogy, bite off more than they can chew, then the frustration is that there's failure rather than success. By taking smaller steps, there's a better chance to assure success each step of the way. A basic rule of thumb in dealing with these kinds of things is to move towards what a person can and build on what they can, rather than frustrate them with what they can't.
Mm-hmm. So this is like the old proverb, make haste slowly.
Yeah, yes. Or the story of the tortoise and the hare, which I actually talk about in the chapter. Slow and steady wins the race, yeah.
Sure. So it's kind of just common sense, isn't it?
It's basically common sense. And in that vein, I can give you a very common sense example if you'd like. A client of mine was the mother of a traumatized child. One of the things she wanted for her young child, he was just 2 or 3 years old, she wanted him to learn how to swim so that he could be safe around the water. Normally, when he was upset, if she would hold him, he would calm down. They had a very good relationship. However, anytime she took him into the water, holding him tightly and comfortingly in her arms, he would scream and scream and scream and could not be comforted, even with that close proximity of her to him. And she brought this to me because they were both getting frustrated. She was getting frustrated with him, he was getting more and more freaked out about going near the water, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to intervene in and make better progress, because she thought she was doing the right thing in holding him safely, caringly, comfortingly. But it wasn't working. So my thought was that going into the water, immersing him fully in the water, even with her holding on, was much too big of a step for him. And so I suggested backing up and trying it in much smaller, slower steps, even if that might be frustrating. So my first suggestion was for him to just sit on the side of the pool, putting his feet in the water only as far as the top step. So he'd be sitting at the side of the pool and really only getting wet up to his ankles or the lower part of his calves. She thought that would be possible, and she tried it the next week, and that was fine. He actually liked sitting by the edge of the pool with his feet in the water, and he'd kick and splash a little bit. And that was as far as they went. I said, don't try more, just have a success. It's been so difficult between the two of you with this. Enjoy and celebrate a success, which they did. So the next task I suggested was that he stay with his feet on the first step, but move out onto the first step a little bit and crouch, so that his rear end would come down into the water and get a little bit wet, so both his feet and his ankles and his rear would be a little wet. And he did that just fine, no problem. So now that his rear was already wet, I suggested that he sit down on the first step and put his feet down on the second step. That also went very well. And they went with this, you know, by then the mother had the hang of it. And the next assignment she decided was that he would stand on the second step and crouch down so that he was wet up to his waist, but standing on the second step. And so gradually, over a period of several weeks, he was able to fully get into the water without screaming, without being upset, without being freaked out, without frustrating Mom. And their success was one success building on another success. The goal was the same. They reached the goal of getting him in the water. It took longer than she had hoped, but it was successful, rather than the frustration of trying to get him to calm down when he was so upset, fully immersed in the water.